For video exam 2, the two prompts that I chose were the two ways to determine death and describing the ethical distinction between killing and letting die. The first of these being the two ways of determining death. The first of those is cardiopulmonary death. It's defined as the irreversible cessation of all cardiopulmonary activity. This is widely accepted, it's uncontroversial, and it's definitive. However, developments in technology are now able to keep people breathing. So a Harvard committee was formed, and they were able to come up with another definition of death, that being the neurological death or brain death. That's defined as irreversible cessation of all brain activity, including the brainstem. It is legalized, and it's allowed healthcare workers and families to take people off of life-sustaining support that have been on for years and have no chance of survival past that or any kind of coming back from that. Both of these are considered socially constructed. This is due to the fact that it is possible that neither definition is the most accurate or accurate at all of what death is or how it works. All in all, we really don't know a lot about death as a process. We probably won't ever know what happens at time of death, so it's impossible to be certain of a singular definition and believe that that is fully accurate. The two definitions that we have now, being cardiopulmonary and neurological, are only criteria that our society uses to simplify what death is and how we understand it. How organ donation complicates both definitions. Basically, it's a different order of operations for both. So if someone is pronounced dead through cardiopulmonary death, that donation happens after cardiac death, and it involves the receiving of organs after irreversible cessation of circulatory and respiratory function. So both of those. Whereas donation after brain death involves donation of organs after the patient meets criteria for death by neurological criteria. So dying through circulatory and respiratory function being irreversibly stopped, it's done. And death by meeting criteria for brain death. So it is a little bit different in both of those situations. It is gone about differently, and there are different things that they have to follow, different checklists. However, there are issues with both definitions. The biggest issues with neurological death is that it's not grounded in a clear understanding of what we mean by dead. Basically, that just means that we, as people, have an understanding that no more heartbeat means dead most of the time. Like I said, it's uncontroversial and it's definitive. So it doesn't fall straight into that, and it's not always fully reliable. So not to say that it's not reliable at all, but there can be times where it's not the most successful way of determining death. Issues with cardiopulmonary death are just that because of improvements in technology, as stated earlier, people were being kept alive for years on life support, even when there was 0% chance of recovery. So we were keeping people alive who had no chance of being able to recover from whatever put them in that state. And candidly, it was a waste of resources. And then moving into the second topic, describing the ethical distinction between killing and letting die. One of the biggest ethical differences between killing and letting die is that killing a patient is 100% wrong. All of the time, no matter what, everyone knows that killing a patient is 100% wrong, whereas allowing a patient to die with their consent is considered morally permissible. A big part of that discussion is cases where life-sustaining treatments are withheld or withdrawn. Those are cases of letting die and are accepted as morally permissible, as aforementioned. Rachel's objections to the moral distinction between killing and letting die He believes that the arguments in favor of the distinction between killing and letting die are flawed. He acknowledges that letting die can take up to minutes, hours, and days, and when looking at it from a compassionate standpoint, physicians-assisted suicide or euthanasia support that way a little bit better, especially in a sense of death with dignity and compassion yet again. Solmacy's articulation, that's a guess, I believe it's Solmacy. His articulation of the difference between killing and letting die, the definition specifically, he defines killing as an act in which an agent creates a new lethal pathophysiological state with the intention of ending someone's life. Letting die is a little bit more specific. That's defined as an act in which an agent performs an action to remove something that stops a pre-existing fatal condition or refrains from action that will stop a pre-existing fatal condition. The flip side of that is that it's about intention. So it's either with the intention to allow that person to die due to that act or not intending to allow that person to die due to that act. I'm gonna say that again. I got lost, so I'm gonna say it again. His definition of letting die is an act in which an agent performs an action to remove something that stops a pre-existing fatal condition or refrains from action that will stop a pre-existing fatal condition. That's either with the intention to allow that person to die due to that act or unintentionally. Solmacy's account for determining the moral permissibility of killing and letting die. Solmacy states that determining the moral permissibility of killing versus letting die all relies on your intentions or the healthcare worker's intentions. He believes that intentionality and the way that you go about things and why you're doing them are the moral determinant for those controversial situations. That's what gives you that's what helps you understand if it is moral or not. So that's that. Those are those two. I'm really sorry I got stuck there for a hot minute. That probably was awkward to watch. And I'm a communications minor, so I'll do better.